And now we move on to the next paper by M.C.Vaijayanthi ji, Sacred Landscape, Celebration of Water, the Tale of Melukote's Tirthas. Melukote, where Melukote is located, everything M.C.Vaijayanthi ji will explain to you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank everyone at Indika, Nagaraji, and all of you for this encouragement and allowing me to be part of this. I come here mainly as a devotee to look at Melukote and also take up the argument of how being a devotee or being someone who is an aspirant for moksha, that is not antithetic to the ecological understanding or reverence that the Tirthas that bring about and the celebrations that bring about it. If everything is Vishnumayam, how can the aspiration to moksha negate that understanding? That is my humble presentation here. I'll begin now. Thank you. Yo nityam macchuda padambuja yukma rukma vyamo hatastatidharani trinaya mene asmad guror bhagavadosya dayeka sindho ramanujasya sharanam prabhatye. Sri Rangamangalamanим Karuna Vivasam Sri Venkatadri Shikaralaya Kalamekam Karojvala Parijatam Srisham Namami Sirasa Yadushaila Deepam. It is a rocky terrain and spread through it are several water bodies, both natural and man-made. The temple town of Melukote in Mandya district is 50 kilometers from Mysore, and it is one of the 4 important Vaishnava pilgrimage centers and also one of the most important pilgrimage centers in Karnataka. Central to the town are the shrines of Tirunarayana, the Cheluvanarayana that you can see in this picture, and also the shrine of the Yoga Narasimha Swami on the hills that is overlooking the town. Melukote forms part of, as I said, the important this thing, and the history of Melukote sort of begins from the understanding that we have now is from the times of the movement of Swami Ramanuja from the Tamil Desam to the Karnataka. And the records also begin from around 12th century from the time of Hoysala king Vishnuvardhana, who had patronized Swami Ramanuja and also the Melukote temple town. As it is rightly observed, and I quote, that this place owes everything to Sri Ramanuja. The devotion of the people of Melukote to him, even after 35 generations, should be seen to be believed. It was his discovery of the deity Tirunarayana, the construction of the temple, restoration of the Utsavamurti Selva Pillai that made Melukote what it was and is. Special mention should also be made about his association with Kalyani Pushkarini, since we are talking about Tirthas. I think I jumped some. Water as an essential utility as well as a sacred Tirtha, both associations can be found in Swami Ramanuja's sojourn in the region. From the creation of Tonnur or the Tondanur lake, it is said that it was on his advice that Vishnuvardhana built the lake utilizing the water that flowed through the gap between 2 hills and named it Tirumala Sagara. The outflow channel from the lake is called Ramanuja Gange in his memory. When the lake is full, it can sustain agriculture for up to 2 years. He is believed to have spent 12 years of his life at Melukote, and Tonnur episode is significant to note that Yati had created a water body tapping into the natural sources that were available, creating a storage that would cater to locals lasting for over 900 years. Coming to the aspect of Tirthas, and Vishnu as a deity is closely associated with the cosmic waters, and many water bodies across the country are dedicated to him, from Rani Ki Vav in Gujarat to the Tiruvallare tank we see in Tamil Nadu. It is therefore impossible not to connect the deity, the rituals with numerous water bodies in Melukote. The inseparable thread of sacred, aesthetic, and utilitarian that very well connected, the interconnectedness ensured the preservation. It is said that there are 108 water bodies in a small town of Melukote, though the total count in modern times is placed at 29 to 30. The water bodies have been explored by many conservationists as a model of rainwater harvesting and conservation. The organized water channels, the filters, and architecture make an interesting case study. First, we look at how the sacred Tirthas came about. We do not have a clear record of when they were physically created, as there are epigraphic records only of the restoration works that patrons took care of. But the important Tirthas have legendary origins that can be seen in the Puranas and the Samhitas. Ishvara Samhita contains 300 verses of Yadavadala Mahatmya. Naradiya Purana, Matsya Purana, and the Padma Purana celebrate the sacred Tirthas and highlight their importance. Though historically we trace the temple, as I said earlier, from the inscriptions in 12th century and the arrival of Swami Ramanuja, the Kshetras that find mention from the various earlier yugas. It was called Narayanadri in Krita Yuga, Vedadri in Treta Yuga, Yadavadri in Dwapara Yuga, and Yatishaila in Kali Yuga. This is the Kalyani Tirtha. About some of the Tirthas I will mention, though I cannot go through all of them. Sage Sanata Kumara was advised by his father, Lord Brahma, to worship Narayana at a sacred place, Bhuvaikunta, that is the Melkota, where there are numerous holy water reservoirs and holy spots on the chief mountain. These spots are never polluted even during the Kali Yuga. The most important Tirtha that we had mentioned at the beginning, the Kalyani Tirtha, named aptly to denote auspiciousness, is considered the essence of all the Tirthas. Tirthas in Yadavagiri represent the 8 holy syllables of the Ashtakshara Mantram, that is the Ashtatirtha we'll be talking about in a little while, and Kalyani is their essence. There are 5 wells in the Kalyani Tirtha that represent the 5 koshas, the 5 Shris, the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and the Anandamaya. And one of the 5 wells is associated with Lord Varaha, which is considered to be perennial even when the waters dry up in the other 4 wells. And during Varaha Avatara, some drops of ocean's water from his holy body fell on the hill of Melukote, from which the Kalyani Tirtha emerged. So the Kalyani Tirtha is celebrated in various ways. It is called milky white waters of Kalyani Tirtha, and it turns milky white when Ganga visits her once a year. And it is also celebrated in the folk ballads like the Varanandi Cheluvaiya Kalyana, the marriage ballad, which talks about how opposite the milk like Kalyani takes place the marriage of Cheluvaiya and Varanandi. Bathing in Kalyani, Maga and Makara is considered effective and wish fulfilling. It was on the banks of Kalyani that Swami Ramanuja found the Thiruman, the white clay or the Shvetamritika, and also that search which led him to the discovery of the Vigraha of Tirunarayana. A dip in Kalyani adorning the Thiruman and a prayer to Tirunarayana gives one all that is desired in this life and liberation, says Matsya Purana. Among the Tirthas that form part of Ashtatirtha, the Veda Pushkarani, where Lord Dattatreya revealed the truth of 4 Vedas to his students and took sannyasa. And Dhanushkoti is connected with the Ramavatara, Yadava Tirtha is connected to the Krishnavatara, and Darbha Tirtha says Chandalya and Dattatreya, and the Ashtatirtha goes up to the Narayana Tirtha, and in the Ashtatirtha festival, it comes and ends at the Vaikunta Ganga. It is situated in the northern end of the town, and water from Trivikrama's feet when Brahma washed it during the Avatara had flowed to this spot on earth and with the name of Vaikunta Ganga. It is also called Tottil Madu because of the shape that resembles cradle in one place. Almost every important festival at Melukote Utsava, Selva Pillai, the Utsava Murti, would visit Kalyani Pushkarani, and it is also conducted in the presence of Swami Ramanuja's Murti. The Ashtatirthas, as mentioned in the earlier, it is the representation of the Ashtakshara, and it forms part of the Shuprapata Shloka of Tirunarayana, which is recited every morning. Reference found from the time of King Raja Odayar of Mysore, that is in the 16th century, for the celebration of Ashtatirthotsava, is offer of Rajamudi and order for celebration of the Ashtatirthotsava. The 10-day Rajamudi Utsava is conducted in the month of Kartika, and the Ashtatirthotsava is a day-long festival forming part of it, which falls on the 14th day of the Kartika Shukla Paksha. The festival begins early morning with the procession of Selva Pillai to the Kalyani Pushkarani. And Selva Pillai returns to the temple thereafter, and the procession continues. The procession of the Sri Chatari continues after the ceremonial dip in the Kalyani Pushkarani to the other Tirthas. By sunset, the Sri Chatari would reach the Vaikunta Ganga. And I would like to quote here from a visiting artist's observation, Melukote through ages. The festivals and rituals in and around temples are still performed, and they do still add a meaning to certain experiences if beholder is open to comprehend them. Water, festival, and the association with fertility. Ladies desirous of progeny would follow the procession with coconuts and fruits in their udi or the muddy, the lap, and bathe in every tank as soon as Sri Chatari is dipped. At Kalyani, they would change into the Kalyani clothes, and after the final Vaikunta Ganga dip, they would change once again. And after that, they would go to pray at Chelvanarayana Swami temple, and they would be offered prasada. It is believed firmly that women who perform this are blessed with children. Writing on the Ashtatirthotsava, historian Vasundhara Filiazot says, this is a sight to be seen and remains evergreen in memory. Through the procession, Taittiriya Aranyaka is chanted. From the ancient to the medieval to the present, probably the natural connection between the sacred, divine, utilitarian food, prayer, birth, nourishment, and sustenance is all done probably without articulating it as the ecological or the environmental this thing. I have added some. And to go to, to the topography a little bit, topographically, the Melukote is located on a hillock and a flat stretch at the top of the hillock, which provides enough area for habitation. Lack of permanent source of water necessitated the inhabitants to come up with unique rainwater harvesting practices. With the support of kings and chieftains, the residents built multiple temple tanks at various strategic locations to collect every drop of rainwater that falls on the hill slopes. The temple-owned lands maintained the water sources and remained central to the economy of the town. It was not only supporting agriculture and other marginal activities that were crucial for the temple, the daily pujas, prasadas, and festivals. In that way, it was a producer as well as a consumer. The inscriptions related to the tank show how the temple took care of water resources held by rich endowments. There are two inscriptions that refer to the restoration of 3 breached irrigation tanks, and other one about the lands that were brought under cultivation. And to talk about the Vijayanagara era reservoirs, I would like to make a mention of how the reservoirs were clearly meant to evoke and to look like temples, monuments, and the sacred places as much as the other protective facilities. The aesthetics and water structures have had a very long connection, and the most fascinating study begins way back perhaps from the times of Shaka ruler Rudradaman. He was repairing a tank that already existed, and it was previously inscribed by Ashoka, the Girnar rock edict. The repairs on the Sudarshana lake is mentioned in Rudradaman's inscription, and I would like to quote the last line from his inscription. Made even more beautiful to look at, which emphasizes not only on its size, utility, strength, but also the beauty of it taken care of while renovating, restoring the water body. This care to create a life-giving, sustaining element like water in a dharmic way, and at the same time celebrate it, beautify it, has continued for centuries. It is in that tradition we find the Tirthas of Melukote, aesthetics, utility, sanctity, celebration through festivals. There isn't a stated ecological case, but living, aligning, tapping and appreciating nature, the seamless, sacred and environmental underpinning of town, tanks and temples. at Melukote. Before I go to the concluding part, here I would like to show the twin ponds of the Akka Tangiya Kole. The Akka tank, which is not in use because it has saline water, and the Tangiya Kola, which is in use where the Abhisheka waters are drawn. And it is looked at as the Ashuri and the Daivi Shakti, one which is blessed and the other which is not blessed. And the way of looking at it in the philosophical system, it is here I would like to also talk about how the temple tanks or the water bodies in Melukote are like classified as sets of three in terms of looking at it as the representation of the Sattva, Rajo, Tamo gunas. And finally, the concluding observations. How the ecological belief is embedded in the seva of creating and sustaining water bodies. Much has been made of the moksha versus dharma dialogue or a debate, and the idea of moksha, aspiration towards liberation, as being seen as a negating to dharma or being ethical. Isn't creation of water bodies and sustaining them a good act, a satkarya? Whatever offerings or gift is made, whatever austerities practice, Bhagavan Sri Krishna says it has to be done with Shraddha in the last verse of the chapter 17. I look at the creation of water bodies or how it is utilizing as a pilgrimage uses it as a representation of that Satkarya. So not going against the ethical or the dharmic principles in whichever way you look at it. The Mysore ruler Mummudi Krishnaraja Udayar in his Sri Tattva Nidhi, as a devotee and as someone coming from the devotees and the family of the Mysore Maharajas, offers eulogies to the deity in the stotras and also adds the 8 names of the Ashatirtha. He is not only a devotee who is praising the deity, but he is also the ruler whose family have for generation endowed for the upkeep of the water bodies, have endowed a Rajamudi Utsava in which the Ashatirtha festival forms a part. There is no otherness in the approach which would lead to neglect of the Tirthas here. The 4 Purusharthas cannot be picked up selectively to say the emphasis on otherness would lead to neglect of the world or the environment. The water bodies in Melukote have taken care of Artha and Kama in nourishing life and forming and weaving, and also has shown the way for Dharma and Moksha. A dip in the sacred waters is not just a dharmic duty of a pilgrimage that would earn him punya, but can also lead to moksha. Patricia Mum partially accepts that Ramanuja Siddhanta can be seen as having ecological ethic in underpinning the role of Vishnu, and Vishnu as preserver of Dharma. To quote from the Sri Lakshmi Tantra, which she herself shows an example. Here is Sri Vishnu's divine consort says that the reason one should obey Vedic law is in order not to disrupt Dharma, to protect the family, to maintain the world and support order, and to please me and Vishnu, the god of gods and the wielder of the discus. But she poses a question as to why should a mumukshu who desires a release from this world care about the environmental ethics? Without going much further onto her exposition, I would like to only say as a practitioner, a prapanna is expected to not do anything that would displease Vishnu. A prapanna still has to carry on with the nitya karmas and nityanushtanas. We cannot forget that not everyone is also desirous and not everyone is a mumukshu. Neerin ramayadu ulaganin yar yarkum Vanindru Amayadu Olgu, says Thiruvalluvar. There can be no life without water, there can be no dharma, the good conduct or ethics without rains. That water sustains dharma and that a dharmika takes care of maintaining that ecological basis. Melukote example shows that the practice and philosophy were all aligned in preservation. Only part that is lagged behind in modern times is patronage and that understanding. In understanding the story of Melukote, every devotee who attends a Vairamudi or a Rajamudi Utsava can become an environmentally aware pilgrim. That's my humble submission. Thank you.
Namaste, Vaijayanthi ji. That was really wonderful. Everyone who knows Hinduism knows that Tirtha is a very highly central concept to the Hindu culture, and Tirtha Yatra, pilgrimage, tourism, everything. And actually, there are Tatakodhara Vratas in Puranas, where Tatakodhara, renovation of a tank, is a vrata. Among the panelists, Jagrati ji was suggesting that just not revering these tirthas, renovation also has to be a very important idea. And it is really, truly, Tatakodhara has been mentioned as a Satkarya in your language. You were mentioning Satkarya, and Satkarya as part of Dharma. And the crucial part of your paper was how you were able to connect this argument with the whole moksha versus dharma debate and argument. And you were showing the other side of the argument also, and you were doing purva paksha of that, and you were showing how actually a moksha seeker need not be opposed to such dharma karya and satkarya. In fact, this satkarya of Tatakodhara or Tataka construction, all these, how it is important. Your paper has such nuanced, detailed analysis of how actually it was connected to the temple rituals, how it was connected to daily rituals, nitya karmas, and all such beautiful analysis. Actually, this makes the audience of this conference tempted to go to Melukote. And your visuals also were so attractive. You were actually almost taking us to Melukote through your
Thank you so much.
presentation. And your argumentation, your debate inside the paper was also highly relevant, and it has to be taken further. Thank you very much for this wonderful paper, Vaijayanthi ji.